Good morning. This morning I was just kind of thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, and a friend of mine sent me a message on Instagram that doesn't live here in the area anymore. He moved down to Phoenix, but I asked him what he had any ideas, what he wanted me to talk about or whatever this morning. And he talked about goals. He wanted me to talk about goals and people that push you to achieve goals. And I'll get to that. I'm going to talk about SMART goals. And there's an acronym that goes with that. But first, what it made me think of is the people that push us to achieve our goals. So Tino has been a friend of mine since high school, maybe longer, I don't remember. But he's family, you know. We've been really close for a long time. Now, when I was using, that relationship wasn't quite the same. I took advantage of people, him especially. I took advantage of anybody that was close to me. I'd call them and almost expect them to help me with whatever I needed at the drop of a hat, which usually was all the time because I was getting into all kinds of weird stuff or something was breaking, and he's a mechanic, so of course he was the first call that I always had. And I always relied on him really heavily. Problem is I wasn't willing to give that back. I was too busy getting high, doing what I was doing, that I didn't treat that relationship like it mattered. And it did. And fortunately for me, he felt the same way enough that he stuck around. He might have distanced himself from me, but fortunately he didn't give up on me. So I just appreciate the people that did that for you. I wasn't given 1, 2, 3 chances. I was given hundreds of chances by everybody. I think that it's really important that we learn how to do that, because as a recovering addict, it's my job, I feel, to either give people those chances, even if I distance myself from them, be there when they're ready, or to show other people how to give those chances out. For a lot of us, that's the only way we make it out of here alive. So Tino, and I love you, I appreciate it. I know I don't tell you that enough. I know we don't talk a whole lot anymore, but that doesn't change the way that I feel about you. And I'm sorry that I took advantage of our relationship. I really am. And I don't know that I've actually ever told you that. But there's quite a few people that I owe that apology to that I don't know that I've made it to very many people. So maybe that'll be a goal of mine, is to finally start 10 years later almost, telling more people that I wish I hadn't done that, but I did, and find out what I can do to rectify that situation, which probably isn't much, because if they're still in my life, it's obviously a non-issue, more than likely. So anyways, thanks Tino for the topic this morning, and to goals. So SMART goals is an acronym. Without looking it up, my memory's kind of shoddy, but I think it means specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So why is that important? Well, if we just have goals and it doesn't meet all that criteria, what's the likelihood of us actually accomplishing our goals or following through with it? Probably not real good, at least not for me. So the difference would be if I say, man, I want to lose 10 pounds. It's a goal. Yeah, absolutely. But there's no substance to it. What does that mean? I want to lose 10 pounds. Doesn't everybody? If it met the criteria for the SMART goals, it would be, I want to lose 10 pounds by next Friday by doing this diet. Okay, so it's simple, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's realistic. Well, not 10 pounds, but if I said a month, that'd be realistic. And it's got the time part on it. Okay, that holds us more accountable to actually complete what we're doing. Now, you don't have to use You don't have to use that same formula just on goals, because you can actually use that on a bunch of different things. So when we talk about relapse prevention plans, a lot of times these aren't made to be an important enough issue. So when we have clients that get ready to go on pass, at a lot of places that I've worked at, they have to come up with a relapse prevention plan. And most of the time it's presented to them by house managers that don't necessarily understand the whole concept behind it, which sucks, because it is really an important thing, and there's a lot to it, and it can save somebody's life if they actually understand what they're doing. So the importance of actually understanding why you're asking somebody to do something, and being able to explain it to them in a way that can motivate them, is a big deal. So the relapse prevention plans, a lot of times we get, are really cheesy, like, oh, I'm going to Phoenix, if I feel like using, I'm going to call somebody. That's probably not going to be something they would actually do. There's no reason for them to. So my relapse prevention plan, and now mind you, I do this in my head, so I don't necessarily have to write it down like we ask the guys to a lot, but I've done so many in my head that they're really similar a lot of the times, and they don't take a whole lot of planning for me. But when you're new in recovery and you're not used to this, it's something you really should think about. It can definitely save your recovery, and if wanting to be clean is something you really want, it's going to take some work, because there are going to be plenty of times getting high would just be so much easier and feel so much better. But that's not the direction we want to go. So like my relapse prevention plan just here in town. First of all, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I feel like I'm to that point where I possibly could go get high, or I want to go get high, and like that's all I'm thinking about, and it's consuming me, and it's a good chance that I might, I've made a promise to myself that no matter what I'm doing, I'm going to drop it and go and do this plan. Okay, and why that's important is because if I don't and I end up getting high, I'm going to lose whatever it is anyway. So if I'm at work, which for me this would be easy, they'd probably be understanding because I work in treatment. But if you had a normal job and you really felt like you were going to lose it and get high, I'd leave work. That's the promise I made to myself. I don't care if I get fired. I'd much rather lose that job by getting fired by staying clean and going and doing what I need to do, rather than getting high and losing it anyway. And if you let your boss know that you're struggling with some personal issues or whatever, chances are you're going to be able to go anyways, without it being a big deal. So mine, okay, there's a coffee shop in town that a friend of mine owns. It used to be called Cuppers. I think it's something else now. Anyway, no matter what I'm doing, I'm going to drive there. I'm going to go in. Preferably, I'm going to sit outside at the outside tables. I'm going to order a hot chocolate, and I'm going to call either Steve or Kevin. Okay, and now that's really specific. But I need it that way. Okay, I need it to be specific, because once our minds get set on using, and that's when our thought process goes to, we're not able to process multiple things at the same time like we normally would. So already knowing that I'm going to have hot chocolate because I'm not a big fan of coffee, I want whipped cream on it. I already know what I'm going to drink before I even get there. I don't even have to think about it, because it's been a plan in my head that it's just a response. Okay, so the whole purpose of this is to pause, alter, change your thought process, because it doesn't take long. 10-15 minutes would be plenty to change your entire thought process from getting high to now I'm back on track, if you give yourself that time. So by the time I drive there and I order my hot chocolate, I'm on the phone. I'm going to call Kevin or Steve. I very rarely have ever called both of them and had neither one of them answer. They've almost always answered for me, and that's important. And I'm going to tell them, hey man, I'm really struggling, whatever. I'm going to tell them what's going on. By the time I get off that conversation on the phone, that conversation, chances are my thought process is going to be totally different. They're going to have helped me. Even if neither one of them answer the phone, I'm going to talk to whoever's outside. I've actually got a whole list of people I can call, so I'm not too worried about that. But if you don't have a whole list of people that you can call and rely on, talk to the person sitting at the table outside with you. You don't have to tell them even what's going on, or you can. Probably not going to ever see them again, so it wouldn't matter anyways. But it's super important. Now, the hot chocolate is also important, or coffee, or hot tea, because it relaxes us. It opens our airways, helps us to breathe, which is all things that we need to do when we're struggling and wanting to get high. So it's really important. That warm drink, to me, is a big factor into my prevention plan. Just going and drinking the hot chocolate would probably be enough, and talking to whoever the server is would probably be enough for me. But I've got this entire plan set up. Now, the key to this is that you've made a promise to yourself that if after the end of executing your entire relapse prevention plan you still feel like getting high or drinking, you've given yourself permission to go and do exactly that. I would say the likelihood of you still wanting to do that would be pretty slim. But if you do, then give yourself that opportunity to go get high without feeling guilty, because you've done everything in your power that you could. Now, that doesn't give you an excuse or a reason to just go out and get high and say, well, I tried. Because if this is something you really want, you're going to actually try. But sometimes people just need to go back out again. Sucks, but that's the way it is. So one of the reasons that this plan works is because inside, like psychologically, you've already given yourself permission. Like, okay, I'm going to do the best I can to try this, and if it doesn't work, I can go get high or drink without all this guilt and shame, because I've done what I could to try and stop it. To me, that's a big part of it too, because what's the motivation to follow through with it? In my mind, if I'm thinking, as a active addict or wanting to relapse, in my mind, why would I go through this if I want to get high? Well, because at the end of it, if I still want to get high, I can go and do it without making myself feel guilty and feel bad. So that's a justification in my mind that I'm going to use to actually go through this process. And it works. So if I go down to Phoenix, like my family goes down to Embassy Suites every summer, a couple of times, whatever. Let's say something triggers me there. My family does something, or I get a bad phone call, or whatever. I've got a whole thing planned out there. Like, there's a restaurant next door, or there's a little pie place next door, cafe. I'm going to go next door and I'm going to order a piece of pie, hopefully blueberry, or like a chocolate silk, something, and I'm going to have probably hot chocolate again. And I'm going to sit there and call somebody or eat a piece of pie and talk to the waitress. I also know where there's meetings close to where I'm going at. So if I was really, really needing it, I could go to a meeting. But it's important for these people, if you're going out of town, or you're taking a trip, or whatever you're doing, to make these relapse prevention plans. Where am I going? What are the things that could come up that could set me off? Am I going back to my old area where I used to get high? Is there a chance I could run into somebody that I owe money to, or somebody that I used to get high to in the Circle K? What can I do to prevent that if it happens? Those are the types of things we need to think about. If you're going down to visit family, make sure you've always got a family member with you. It's easy, because if you run into a drug dealer that you owe money to, or somebody just wants to get you high, you've got a built-in excuse already right there. Oh man, I'm with my mom, I can't talk right now. That gives you an out, right? Know where the meetings are at in case that run-in makes you really start wanting to go get high, and you think about having something delivered to your folks' house or wherever you're visiting. Know where there's meetings at before you go there. Have this all written down so that you don't have to think about it. You can just pull your paper out and look at it if it's a new plan. And you do this enough, and you'll just do it in your head every time you go somewhere. You already have a plan in mind. So this is a really important goal, and it's really important, I think, that it's more people put more emphasis on why it's important. Something this simple. I mean, what are we talking about? A couple of minutes worth of time to look up where meetings are at, write this down, whatever. Something that simple can save our recovery. But it's not emphasized. It's kind of made up to be a joke, to where the clients, they ask for a pass and they do one of these, and it's this really half-hearted attempt to just suffice the house managers or whoever to get a pass. It is super important. It's one of those goals. That's something that needs to be a SMART goal. Okay, so it doesn't have to just be on goals. It can be on situations like this as well. Now, something my sponsor taught me a long time ago when I first got in recovery was I would get overwhelmed with stuff because it was too big of a project or whatever. And he taught me to look at everything in a grid. So if I've got a goal that's huge, it's going to be intimidating. It's going to be a lot harder to actually achieve. If you break it into smaller goals, so you see the end result that you want and your starting point, what do you need to do in between? So you break all those into little goals and figure out what you have to do and take it one step at a time. Every time you achieve one of those smaller goals, it just builds up momentum, positive momentum. You feel better about yourself. Your self-esteem goes up. Your self-worth goes up. You start feeling like you can accomplish more, even if they're small goals, because ultimately it's taking you to that big end goal. A lot of times we get stuck, people call it future tripping. We get stuck thinking about something in the future. It could be next week, it could be 20 years from now. But the reason we get stuck there, and we get filled with fear and anxiety, which is the future tripping part, and that screws a lot of people up. We get stuck there because there's no plan. You come up with whatever the problem is or what's bothering you, but you don't have any plan in place to get rid of it. As soon as you come up with a plan, even if it's not the one you end up going with, you just come up with a plan, something to execute to help get out of that situation, most of that fear and anxiety goes away. Same thing with our past. You get stuck in your past and you get caught up in shame and guilt, right? So we got to be really careful about that too. But making goals will help us keep us out of that future tripping. It'll help give us a direction, and most of us need direction. We also need people like the Tinos in my life to keep us on track and give us direction, because God knows without people like him, my nephew Richard, my brother Mike, like there's a ton of people that I took advantage of all the time, regularly, that were always there for me. And it took a long time before they really started distancing themselves, and I didn't appreciate it. I know they know that they love them and care for them now, but I definitely didn't do my part in that relationship a long time ago. And that sucks. But I'm very fortunate that I had people like that, and my family included. My family could have walked away really easily too. But they didn't. So goals are important, and appreciate the people that are motivating you to push those goals. So with that, I love you guys. Have a fantastic day.